Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Jennifer J. We are doing part 14 tonight. So I'm setting my timer so I won't go too long. And I hope that you have been really digging into the word this past week and seeing how you can say I will. Today we are clear up to February 8th. I know I ended with February 8th last time. I didn't get far enough because there was a lot more that happened that day. But I listened to a sermon. You guessed it, T.D. Jakes, The Crushing. And The Crushing is a whole series. So when you go to look for that on YouTube, there are a lot of them. This one happened to be on John 15, verses 1 through 8. And so it's about the vine and the branches. And you may have heard that, but something I learned, I was watching T.D. Jakes' Glimpses of Jesus last night. And he reminded me that not everybody is in the same place. And while I'm assuming that the people watching are believers, everybody isn't in the same place. And so I should read the word and not assume that you know the story. So I am going to read just a few verses here from the Gospel of John, verse 15, verses 1 through, let's go through 8. So it says, I am the true vine and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. So we talked about that a little bit last week about, how the legitimacy of his name and how you can ask for things and get them. But if you're really in his word and you're really abiding in him, then you're going to be asking things that align with what he's asking the Father for. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. But what T.D. Jakes was talking about in The Crushing was that every branch that bears fruit gets pruned, and he cuts us because we're fruitful. So sometimes I think I know that people judge, because I've been judged by someone because bad things were happening in my life, so I must have sin in my life, right? And you just can't judge somebody that way, because it says that he's going to cut the people that are being fruitful. And cutting doesn't sound enjoyable, does it? I mean, he's taking a knife and cutting off the branches, like you would prune a plant so that it would grow more and flourish better. And that's what he does to us. But something I thought was interesting that he said, you have to give up safety if you're going to follow God. And it reminded me when I was driving here from Kansas, because I am in Arizona. It's 1,200 miles, and so much of it, you guys, if you haven't driven it, so much of it is just desert highway. It makes me think of the Eagles, the Hotel California. It was a dark desert highway. It was a dark desert highway. There's no lights. There's no civilization for miles and hours. There's no establishments, There's no convenience stores or towns, or the only other people you see are in their car driving on this highway with you. And it's 4 lane, but it's 2 lanes each way. And I dare not call it a median. It's more like just, dirt in between them. There's no shoulder. There are hundreds of 18-wheelers, and traffic is it is not fun. And if there happens to be a wreck, heaven forbid, and people are speeding a lot and with the 18-wheelers going in and out of traffic and stuff, there are wrecks. I've seen them. Had to sit an hour and a half twice on these trips here because it takes so long for the ambulance or the police to get there. To even clear the road. You just have to sit and wait until they can get there and get it cleared, and then people are zippering to get into one line, and it takes forever because, of course, nobody knows how to zipper. And so it's just it made me think of safety, because following God here, there were some safety issues. And even the one time that I came and I went for hours without really seeing much traffic, there was one or two other cars and they whizzed by me and they were gone, and I was just out there by myself. And you know, there's just desert on both sides. There's cactus and there's mountains and there's tumbleweed and there's just nothing. So I tried to travel during the daylight hours and get where I was going before dark, but you have to give up safety if you're going to follow God. And I thought that you have to trust God. That's what it boils down to. You have to trust him. And so just something to think about. God knows where and when and how to cut you so that you become more fruitful. And so he can be trusted with the safety issue, but he can be trusted with how he's cutting you too. So you might think these things in your life that are happening are so grievous, and you might not understand why, but God knows why, and he has a good reason and a good purpose, and it's all to glorify him. Everything is to bring glory back to him. So something else that he touched on was that grapes go bad. So if you think about, if you didn't get pruned or didn't get harvested, let's say if the grapes are on the vine and they don't get gathered, what's going to happen? They're going to rot, right? And that's what's going to happen to us if we just stay there. We have to always be changing and moving. And so as the grapes are gathered and crushed, which is when Jesus is pruning us, right? It hurts. But as those grapes are crushed and made into wine, what happens to wine? Wine becomes better with age, becomes better and better. And that's what we do as we age as a Christian. We become wiser and are more knowledgeable and better able to help younger Christians that are coming up in the faith. And so I thought that was a really good word picture to think about, that grapes go bad, but wine gets better with age. And then he also said the knife is in the right hand. You have to understand God's character to trust his ways. And I do trust God's character, and I wouldn't want the knife in anybody else's hand. I don't know about you. But I'm going to circle back to that in a minute, because then I listened to, on that same day, I listened to Tony Evans, and his sermon was called Signs You Are Called by God. And I made one note I want to mention to you guys. I don't know, some of you know this and some of you might not, but in the original language, in the original text, Yahweh was it's just 4 letters. It's YHWH. So if it's directly translated into English, it would be YHWH. And since we don't have words like that because we use vowels, we've added the vowels to make the name Yahweh. So when you hear God called Yahweh, that's why. Jehovah is the same way. Jehovah comes from those same letters. It's just that people have added letters to make it be a word in the English language. So Jehovah, Yahweh, God, all means the same thing. But Tony Evans was speaking out of 1 Kings chapter 17 and verse 8 through 15. And I am going to read it to you. So it says, well, I am going to read it to you when I get to it. Just a second. 15. I apologize. It's 17 verse 8. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Arise, go to Zarephath. There are some hard words in the Bible. Which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. See, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. So he arose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, indeed a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, Please bring me a little water of... You guys, let me start that over. Please bring me a little water in a cup, that I may drink. And as she was going to get it, he called to her and said, Please bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. So she said, As the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread, only a handful of flour in a bin and a little oil in a jar. And see, I am gathering a couple of sticks, that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said to her, Do not fear, go and do as you have said, but make me a small cake from it first, and bring it to me, and afterward make some for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord God of Israel, the bin of flour shall not be used up, nor shall the jar of oil run dry, until the day the Lord sends rain on the earth. So she went away and did according to the word of Elijah, and she and he and her household ate for many days. The bin of flour was not used up, nor did the jar of oil run dry, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Elijah. And there is so much in there, you guys. But one thing that he talked about was, if you go after idols, don't call on God for blessing. And I know in the last segment we talked about where T.D. Jakes had said the blessing can't be bigger than the person that's going to receive it. And so that's what that reminded me of, because in Sidon they worshipped Baal, and Baal was a false god, and he was the enemy of the true God. And so she lives in that place. So I'm getting so far ahead of myself because there's so much. But Elijah, first of all, he was told to go to this place, which is not a safe place for him to go, which takes me back to T.D. Jakes saying you have to give up safety, because Elijah was asked to go where it wasn't safe, and these people did not believe in the true God. They believed in Baal. They worshipped an idol. And yet he went, he obeyed, and this woman who lives there, but she recognized that he was a man of God. She said, your God, how did she say that? As the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread. She knew that he was a believer in the true God. And she stepped out on faith and trusted him and his God to do what he had said would happen. And so I think that's pretty amazing. And then when Tony Evans was saying, if you go after idols, don't call on God for blessing, I was thinking about, what are the idols in our day and age? Our phones, for sure. TV, Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV, all the different channels, sporting events, so many things that we place ahead of God. And if you're not spending time with God, or if you're not willing to give up some of those things to spend time with God, then God isn't the priority. And so we have to do a self-check every day and make sure that we're making him the priority. And he also said, when we abandon God for our sin, we have moved away from the provider. And what I thought about there, we talked about that you can't say, I'm going to live this way, and well, now I'm going to stop and sit here a while, because you're either moving forward or you're sliding backward. And it made me think about when you sin in the heat of the moment. Let's say somebody cut you off in traffic and you flipped them the bird and you cussed them out and whatever, you lost your temper and you sinned. And that's in the heat of the moment sin. And then there's sin where you premeditate it, where you say, I really like doing this thing over here and I really want to do that, and I know God doesn't want me to, I think I'm going to anyway. And that's the kind of sin I think of when he says, when we abandon God for our sin. And I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. We're all human. But that's a dangerous place to be. And you need to correct yourself very quickly. And, he is willing to forgive us. All we have to do is ask. But I just think that was really important to mention, that we have to keep ourselves in check and make sure that we're not letting our thought life run away with us in a way that wouldn't honor God, or our actions. You've heard the song when you were a little kid in Sunday school, be careful little feet where you go, and be careful little eyes what you see, and be careful little mouth what you say. And I think it's really important to remember. So he also mentioned that sometimes he is testing us to humble us, and that it can be a death blow at our independence and our pride. And again, when I was saying that sometimes grievous things are happening in your life, and some people will judge and think you're being sinful, like Job's friends thought he must have some sin in his life that he needed to confess. But that's not always the case. Sometimes God is just pruning us, and he's pruning us for our own good. And so if he has to test us to get us where he wants us to be, then we need to be thankful for that. And it can be really difficult to be thankful for grievous situations. But we need to learn how to do that. And my timer's going off, but I do have a couple of other things I want to mention. So in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 and 9, Paul was talking about that they were undergoing a great deal of affliction to the point of death, that they might learn to trust him. And so that talks to what he's saying, that he might have to test us to humble us. They were at the point of death, like fearing for their very life. And Jesus was doing that to test them, to build them up so that they would trust him, so they would learn to trust him. And so think about that this week as you're going through your week, and as bad things happen, or unexpected things that might be grievous to you or frustrating to you, and ask God how he's using that to grow you and build your character, because there is a purpose for it. It's not an accident. And he's wanting you to look to him and figure out what he's doing in your life and how he's growing you, and write things down. I know you might not be able to write it that minute, but before you go to bed or whatever, after dinner, whenever it works for you, write down those things that you thought about before you forget them. Because you're watching this channel and you've been faithful to watch clear through all 14 of these now, and there's a reason, and it's because God is talking to you, and he's trying to get your attention, and he's doing a thing in your life. And so we want to trust him to do that. Even when we're in his will, he wants to deepen our faith. And then he said, you only have one source. Anything outside of God is a resource and not the source. So I'm going to stop there. I'm not quite done with that, but I'm going to stop because I've taken up enough of your time for today, and we'll pick that up in 15. And so this week, try to pay attention to what he's doing for you. Write in the comments, leave me a note, let me know what he's doing. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I would love to have you, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.